Leadership is personal work with public consequences. Before we try to influence anyone or anything, we have to first examine our own beliefs, identities, and assumptions. So this season, we're unlearning what no longer serves us and becoming the leaders our future requires. Hello, everybody. We are back with season 2. We are in the Leadership Lounge with Dr. Shanesia Davis. That is me, where we just embark on a journey for better leadership. It's not about a rival. There's no destination. It's just about engaging in intentional practice to become better for the people that we serve so we can get to that shared vision. Today, our very first episode of season 2, we have Dr. Brandynicole Brooks, LCS. You in the house. Say hello to everybody.
Hello, everyone. So glad to be here in the lounge.
So happy to have you here. Super excited because we're going to be talking about a term that she coined, and it is presented in her book. Please go get it. Go get it. Go get it. Go get it. Claim and Fire, Leadership, Identity, and Becoming as a Black Lesbian. Dr. Brandynicole Brooks is a leadership and organizational wellness strategist. She's an expert in her field. She's studied this. She's true to this. I'm going to start off with an excerpt on page 73. And it says, for Black women, humility has been both armor and chain. It carried us through centuries of violence, teaching us to bow our heads to survive the lash, to soften our voices to escape the noose, to shrink our brilliance so we can live another day. But even in silence, we were plotting. Even in whispers, we were singing freedom. Even in shadows, we were raising children, building community, tending fire. What looked like humility was often strategy, a mask worn to survive, a cover beneath which rebellion bloomed. The world has never loved a proud Black woman. Our truth has been called arrogance, our fire mistaken for rage, our strength turned into caricature. They crowned us with archetypes that chained us: the strong one, the caretaker, the church girl, the invisible crowns that glittered like honor, but cut like shackles. Yeah, that's how we started. We started just like that. So in this book, she has coined a term, toxic humility, and that's why today's title is Overcoming Toxic Humility, Refusing to Shrink. So, doctor, please, how did we even get here? Like, how'd you come up with this term, toxic humility?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, thank you so much, Dr. Davis, for having me and for sharing the book. I'm excited about how it can impact the lives of Black lesbian leaders, but not just Black lesbians, but just Black women. Toxic humility came from a space of me working honestly on my dissertation. This book is a conversion of my dissertation, taking the academic research and knowledge and making it more accessible to those who are not going to sit and read a 230 something page dissertation, and being intentional about not only showing the research, but then what can we do? How do we unlearn some of these things? How do we step into the space of claiming our fire and fully taking up space, who we are, where we are at all of our intersections? And so toxic humility was right around the time where we started talking heavily in the social media and media sphere around toxic masculinity, toxic positivity. And I recognized, especially when I was in the space of becoming a facilitator and a trainer and doing workshops, that when people stood up and read my bio, I would always step up to the mic and give a little like chuckle and say, oh my gosh, it's just so much. And like immediately set the tone for people to minimize who I was and the things that I had accomplished in that space. And while initially I felt like it was just me being humble and recognizing people don't want to hear a 500-word bio, but it was really more so me pulling in generations, not even years, but generations of be humble, humble yourself, act with humility. And so when it becomes a space where I'm not able to even be excited about obtaining my clinical license as a social worker, which takes time and effort and energy, or obtaining my PhD, which also took time, effort, and energy, or even getting to a space where I can be seen as a subject matter expert,
Mm.
that I'm in the space of facilitating and providing a workshop. My humility in those spaces and not celebrating those spaces became toxic because now I'm beginning to be more quiet in spaces, or I was hiding kind of my accomplishments because of the feedback that I would get from those who weren't accomplishing the same things. And so that's where toxic humility came from, is recognizing that we as Black women, especially, often don't toot our own horns.
Hmm.
But as we have seen in many spaces, and even in 2026, that cis men tend to be in a space where they're going to toot their horns regardless if they're doing something great or detrimental. So it was intentional, this kind of naming this terminology. To be able to put a name to something is also a way to be able for folks to recognize it, and then to think about, how can I not be toxic in my humility? So it's not to say we shouldn't be humble. It's about when to step in and when to step back.
And I love that you brought up that dynamic. Oftentimes we live in this either or life. So it's
Yeah.
either you're humble or you're arrogant. So how do you navigate the nuance between the two? Not subscribing to toxic humility, but remaining humble. Like, what is that?
Yeah, so I think it's really about being in a space where we recognize when to step up and when to step back, like I mentioned. And so if I'm in a space where I've been presented as this is our subject matter expert for the day, I need to own that because someone else has already introduced me as a subject matter expert. And instead of getting up and being, oh my gosh, it's just so much, it's let's just get into the conversation. There's no need for that additional opportunity to say to other people, it's okay for you to minimize what you just heard. It's more so, I'm going to own this by just stepping in and saying, good afternoon, everyone. I'm so glad you're here, and getting into the conversation instead of pausing for that moment to say, it's okay if it was too much for you because it was too much for me too. So
Oof.
being intentional in recognizing that where we have come in our lives, we have overcome our hardest days because we're still here, honoring that space of stepping into whatever this role might be, whether you see yourself as a leader or not, and being intentional about stepping into the space fully with everything that you've brought to that space.
You say you don't want to set the tone to minimize. And
Yeah.
I'm like, when you said it, oh, that stung a little bit because that's not the way I see it when I'm doing it.
Yeah, it's not the way many of us see it, but it's many of us were trained in that space, unfortunately, especially for us who grew up in the Black church. I talk a little bit about this in chapter 3. If you grew up in the Black church, you know that women, especially, were told to sit down and be quiet. You can clap, but you can't be up here in the pulpit preaching. You can sing in the choir, but you still need to be quiet. Kids were raised. We all know the phrase, children are to be seen and
Seen,
not.
not heard.
Exactly. And those messages, especially if you are a child who is seeking validation, if you are a child who's struggling with any type of mental health challenge or condition, depression, anxiety, if you are a child who just wants to feel loved by people who may not be showing you love, as they continue to give you these messages of being quiet, being unseen, being invisible, then you start to hold on to that. And that's where it leans from, this place of just being humble in the things that you do versus being toxic in your humility. There's definitely a balance. It's something that we have to unlearn for ourselves. Many of us struggle with taking up space,
Mhm.
just because of the messages that we've gotten, not just from the pulpit, not just from our families, but also when we get to school and we start making friends and we start building relationships in our adolescent years. Those are things that we have to unlearn.
Yeah, and that's why what I appreciate you did with the book is that you don't just dump in like what it is. You could tell you're a scholar because you take us through this whole journey of how do we get there, what it is, how to unlearn it, how did we learn it in the first place.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think for those of us who may be listening and say, no, I don't exhibit toxic humility, I am humble. What are
Mm,
some of the signs that might help some recognize that no, boo, that's not that is not being humble, that is toxic humility. What are
yeah.
some signs that you think might go unannounced?
Being in a space where you're minimizing already from jump when you're introduced to someone. For me, it was even after I got my PhD, feeling uncomfortable with people introducing me as Dr. Brandynicole. When
It
it's
is
a,
something.
yeah, because you just get uncomfortable. Or even When you're in spaces, sitting in a boardroom, in a conversation, and everyone is introduced as doctor except for you, and you just let it go. However, you've earned that PhD just like everyone else at that table, everyone else in that space. Other ways I've seen toxic humility show up in leaders is what we've seen and heard about often is I'll have an idea in a meeting, someone else has that same idea, but they're applauded for that idea. And so then I start to feel like I need to shrink or be more quiet in this session because no one's really listening to me. It can look like even being in a space where for me, it was just forgetting some of the things that I've accomplished. I am a 2 times published author. Sometimes I forget that I've published before this book. Sometimes it's about thinking through even the way that we price our facilitation fees. So if you're someone who is in the facilitation space or you're a consultant or you're doing the work, pricing who you are, your experience, what you bring to the table. If it's too low, that's a sign of toxic humility. If it's not sustainable, that's also a sign of toxic humility. But in smaller ways, toxic humility can just honestly look like when you are in a space and you want to say something, but you don't say anything, and it leaves you feeling like, I could have done more in that moment. Someone harms you in some way with their words, their actions, and you don't say anything. Is that because you're leaning into your humility? Is it because you don't desire conflict? But it ends up leaving you feeling less and less seen and more invisible. And you start to shrink and become this, oh, I'm just not going to say anything when I'm in partnership with this person or in conversation with this person because they don't care what I have to say anyway.
What I think I landed on this chapter in particular because it stung a little. And I know for me, it's real discomfort in
Yeah.
times
Hmm.
when, receiving praise of some sort. I definitely go to minimize, but your call out and how that leads to shrinking is like, because I'm one that's telling everybody, no, don't shrink, take up
Yeah.
space. And here
Hmm.
I go. You
Yeah.
give me a now I'm like, okay, I've like trained myself to be okay with a compliment or two. But I feel like
Hmm.
once somebody goes past a certain point, I'm like, all right, that's enough. Like you can stop now.
And my response to that is, no, keep coming. Thank you. I appreciate that. I did pour my soul into this. Absolutely.
Yeah,
You
and
have
I
to get
love that
comfortable with it. Yeah.
that reframe. I love how you go to and you do this throughout the book. You make sure that folks are along the ride with you by
Mm,
defining certain things, making sure we're all on the same page. This one, the strong black woman, because we hear that all the time. Some folks feel as though it's a term of endearment. Some folks are like, don't even say those words to me.
absolutely.
But you defined it as the strong black woman who carries everyone and never cries. And there's this poem. I don't know if you have you heard it. It's called "The Strong Black Woman Is Dead."
Yes. Yes.
So I performed that piece a few times,
Oh,
and
yeah.
the strong black woman is dead. For those who are listening, is all of the ways the strong black woman dies. And that is what I heard scream out when you said the strong black woman who carries everyone and never cries. And the reason why I brought that up is because I want to move into the cost. Because some folks, they're like,
Mhm.
who cares if I don't like a compliment? Like that doesn't change anything in the grand
Mm.
scheme of
Mhm.
things. So can you take us through a little bit about what's the cost?
Yeah. So the cost of shrinking is honestly slowly but surely eating away at us, not only emotionally, but physically. So when we're thinking about this idea of toxic humility and being in a space where I'm carrying the weight of everyone else because no one is stepping up to help me to carry the weight as a strong woman, black woman, as the one who is seen as the Jezebel. I talk about that in another chapter. All
Mhm.
of these stereotypes, archetypes that have been placed on us are slowly eating away at our own sense of self and who we are and how we show up. And so the cost of humility looks like children who are walking around with their heads hung low, who are slumped over and not really engaging in all of the enrichment activities that are available to them. It can look like for us as Black women, not being in a space where we step up and say, this is what I need to be able to achieve. So if Tom, Dick, and Harry are being sent to professional development training and I'm not being sent as well, that's now impacting my ability to move forward like Tom, Dick, and Harry. If it's a situation in which we are thinking about this, the physical manifestation of toxic humility is very much connected to the idea of weathering. And weathering for Black women is how we are constantly facing racism, sexism, genderism, and how that is slowly eating away at us, and it shows up as high blood pressure, high cholesterol. It shows up as sleep apnea, insomnia. That's how it shows up for us. And we know that that long term has impacts on us physically as well.
Because typically we assign whatever ailment to the thing happening at the
Yeah.
time. I'm stressed because of X.
Hmm.
And what you're introducing for us is this kind of slow but steady layering
Yes.
of ailments for us that we take on when we think that we're being humble. But
Hmm.
really, we're minimizing ourselves. And I do speak a lot about what we were designed for. We were designed for excellence and greatness, for our brilliance to shine. I say that God gave us these gifts, they're not ours not to show.
Yeah.
But 100% in the same vein, I will dismiss a compliment pretty
Mm,
pretty swiftly. I've been working
interesting.
on it. I've been trying to get better, right?
Because
Because
you
I
just
know
said
that
one of the things that we're doing is that we are made for excellence. So when
Mhm.
people see that excellence in us, why are we stopping it?
Right.
Why are we putting it under a bushel?
And you talk about it in the book when you talk about, the roots of it all. It was survival. And oftentimes in the
Hmm.
work that I do it, identity based leadership development. Talk a little bit about where is this coming from? Why it feels so necessary to hold on to. And
Mm,
I often talk about when something has served you so well, it seems utterly ridiculous to let it go. Like, what is it?
absolutely.
Like, how can I put this thing down? It's worked for me. People have appreciated the fact that they can get the brilliance out of me, but I'm 100% okay with no, you go ahead up front and present it, or you go do it. You show it. I'm okay with that. So, thinking about that and how it's gotten me to where I am, because folks didn't feel as though I took up too much space, to now I'm showing up more fully as myself. And like I said, it's a journey. There's no
Hmm.
destination. It's constant practice that I have to
Yeah.
remind myself, like, take up space. Like I'm like, girl, you better go in there and say something. Like,
Yeah.
like I have to
You got
give
to
my
hype yourself up sometimes.
I
Absolutely.
do. So how do you do that? How do you do that for yourself when you fall yourself falling back into the pattern that you done studied, published? How do you get yourself back in check?
Yeah, great question. I think it is a pep talk, but it's also having to remind myself in the moment, like, what is the cost of me shrinking in this space?
Mm.
So if I'm
Say that again,
shrinking,
because that's really
yeah,
good.
what is the cost of shrinking in this space? So if I shrink in the space of stepping into a facilitation, because that's a huge piece of what I do with my consultancy is I'm doing workshops and keynote addresses and things of that nature. If I shrink, automatically my audience has shut down. So she doesn't
Mhm.
even believe what she's saying because she just came up here and giggled about all of their accomplishments. When I'm thinking, oh my gosh, she is a well accomplished, well read woman, and I'm ready to hear what she has to say. So in that moment, I've cut my audience off. I may have impacted how they're going to engage with me. There may even be people in that space that have my next $1 million contract, but now because I have shrunk
Mm.
on that and that at that podium, they're like, oh, I can't have her as the face of X, Y, or Z. And so thinking about what is the cost of shrinking, not only is it about being able to be successful and continue to grow, but it's also, if we think about the mental health and emotional impact of shrinking, is that no one wants to be in a space where they feel unseen or unheard
Yeah.
or misunderstood. And so if I don't show up fully as myself, if I don't embrace the accomplishments that have brought me to this place, because those accomplishments have taught me something about the world, about myself, how to build relationship, how to be in relationship and be in community, then I am not allowing myself to show up fully so that people can fully love me and show up for me where I need them.
Mhm.
If I show up as a strong Black woman who never cries all the time because I'm shrinking by not sharing, no, this is my real burden, then no one's there to say, how can I help you pick that up?
Yeah. And that's really good. I'm glad that you highlighted that because I think that that's one way that folks may not realize, hey, I'm shrinking. Because a lot of times we see our ability to withstand the things that we're going through.
Mm,
We call it emotional regulation. They say
yeah.
you're emotionally constant regardless of what's going on, which
Mhm.
it's a skill to have, but at some point it becomes toxic. So I
Yes.
like that you lifted that. I have a question. It's more of a this one for Shanesia because you talked about when you get up in front of an audience and you start to shrink, you cut off your audience.
Hmm.
What about for those of us who, even though I know I'm shrinking, I can still show up and folks
Mm,
be, but I know I was up there shrinking.
yeah.
What do you say for folks like me? Get me together.
I'm gonna get you together. So my question would be to you in those moments or after that facilitation, what do you feel in your body?
Mm. Yes,
Because when you shrink, you are putting forth so much more effort than you would ever have to put forward if you just showed up authentically as you.
that's
So
good.
for those of us who say, "Oh, after I people, I have to go home and take a nap and I need a day of rest and things of that nature." What was it that you were doing that makes you so exhausted? Now,
Mm,
for me, I'm an introvert all day every day. Peopling is exhausting because I feel like I have to perform in some efforts because of my introversion. However, there's those of us who are not necessarily introverted, but shrinking in a way that it becomes exhaustion and it just adds another layer of the exhaustion. Because if I'm masking, because shrinking is basically masking, if I'm up here masking this and that and I'm performing, then it becomes exhausting. And we can, turn to our, performing arts. When you're up on the stage and you're, like you mentioned, you performed the poem, or if someone's in a musical, whatever, because I'm performing, I'm exhausted because I'm not being who I am. I'm being someone else.
mm,
And so if I show up authentically in spaces and I'm not allowing myself to shrink in those spaces and I'm just owning the space because they gave me the space to own, then
mm,
I'm not going to experience as much of the mental load as I would if it's just about introversion. If it's just about, I just have anxiety when I'm talking to people.
mm. See, that's good because I think that there's the exhaustion, like you said, the exhaustion of you just gave all that you got. How do
Hmm.
I know the difference between that? I'll just say good exhaustion and mastering exhaustion. Like, how do
Yeah.
I know that if that's a rule of thumb I can use after I leave off and I know, oh, this is that exhaustion where I gave everything I had versus
Mhm.
I just used energy unnecessarily masking?
Yeah. So for me, it is taking the opportunity in the same way that I would send a survey out to my participants in any workshop I do. I do a survey for myself of how did that go? When
Mm,
they introduced you, how did you feel about the introduction and how did you behave based on that feeling? So if it's a situation where I'm like, oh my gosh, they're reading this whole one page and I only wanted them to read the paragraph. Now I have to go up here and tell these people, I'm so sorry they took so long to introduce me. In that moment, was I shrinking or was it my really truly concerned about the time that they took to introduce me?
mm,
So really assessing like the question I asked you, how do I feel in my body now that I'm done with this facilitation? And in what places did I shrink? And how can I not shrink in the next one? So being very intentional about asking the right questions and doing our own self-assessment at the end of a presentation in the same way that we ask our audiences to evaluate us.
I'm always pushing leaders to give yourself space so
Yes.
that you can evaluate these types of things for yourself. So
Hmm.
many times we're busy. My calendar is packed. I went from meeting to meeting, didn't even drink any
Yeah.
water.
Oh, and we're
That
patting ourselves on the back for being dehydrated. What?
right.
Like, come on.
So, given the importance of reflective space so that you can take account of what just happened
Yeah,
and the power that that gives you when accessing your ability to be present so that it's not
exactly.
lost on you what just occurred. As you talked about humility being a survival skill, I want to be able to give our listeners and our watchers an opportunity to note, like, so I want to talk about what are some things we need to unlearn in
Mm.
overcoming toxic humility and refusing to shrink.
I think the biggest thing that we need to unlearn is that we are valuable in the spaces that we enter. I have something to add to this table, this space, this conversation, this relationship, wherever we see ourselves shrinking. We have to acknowledge and understand that we add value simply because of who we are. I think it's much easier said than done. I know it is. However, the more that we remind ourselves of that, the more that we even say it out loud. How am I going to add value today? That helps us to start to unlearn the toxic side of the humility. Because I want to make sure that our listeners hear me when I say that I'm not saying don't be humble because humility is going to get you a long way. It's about finding the spaces and places where your humility should be and where you should absolutely be celebrating yourself. When we're thinking about this kind of first step of just how do I add value, it's also about how am I supporting others to add value
Mm,
to the space? So it's still thinking outside of ourselves. And it's still in a space of when I see Dr. Davis shrinking, Dr. D, I need you to go up there and let them know. Instead of, because I know that Dr. Davis is working in the background and she's sending somebody else up there, and I'm gonna lean into somebody else and say, I need you to make sure that you say Dr. Shanice's name up there when you get up there. Like, don't act like this is yours. Right. So it's about not just me being able to show and not show up and not shrink. It's also about how am I supporting others to show up and not shrink.
I was just having a conversation today with another Black female scholar, Dr. Dom, and we were talking about genuine relationship
Mm.
and how we've been kind of conditioned to be transactional.
Yeah.
My worth is tied up in what I can give to
Mhm,
others.
mhm, mhm.
So when you said we're valuable in the spaces that I'm in, I immediately went to that conversation I was having about the importance of community
Yeah,
and building community.
yeah.
And although we theoretically know the importance of community, our behaviors tend to be transactional because that's how we were conditioned. So when you bring up we're valuable in the spaces that we're in, not
Mhm.
necessarily being tied for what we can do, just who you are, that's such a pivotal point. If we can grasp that, tell us what will start to happen if we're able to do that as a collective of Black women.
I think that if we're able to remember our value and we are able to step out of toxic humility, we will not only see ourselves grow individually and have that self growth moment, but we will also see growth in our community. Because again, it's about how am I supporting others to overcome their toxic humility and identify it. And so being intentional and about how can I lift my sister up when I see that she's shrinking, building relationship in a way that you can tell when she's shrinking so that even when she doesn't recognize that we have this relationship, I can say, sis, back there when you were having this conversation, it felt like you weren't being fully you. What happened? What's going on? Let's talk about it. And I also believe that we will start to feel better about who we are and how we show up. If I'm showing up fully as myself and I'm taking the opportunity to celebrate myself and refill my cup, then I start to feel less emotionally drained, less physically drained in every space that I walk into.
I want to be able to allow folks to just have some quick in the moment reframes for themselves. Because you did talk about some things being a pep talk to be able to remind yourself what are some in the moment things I could do to check myself out, even if I don't got my good sister there to check me. What
Yeah.
are some things I could do, notice, and then reframe
Mm.
to help me move away from toxic humility towards just humility? Just a great characteristic to have.
I think the biggest piece is, am I shrinking? Just asking that question. As I'm in this meeting, as I'm in this conversation, am I fully being seen? Is my point really being heard? And if not, then I need to pause everybody and say, hey, wait, I think that there's some miscommunication here. For some of us, that may be a struggle, especially if we're in the space of toxic humility. And I understand
Absolutely.
that. And so then it is, how do I even show up in a space differently? Is it that I'm leaning forward more in the conversation? Is it that I'm being more vocal and adding to what's happening in the conversation? The smaller, like intimate things, and one of the things is that I was intentional in the book is there's space for you to journal and to answer some
Mm.
questions so that you can get into how can I show up fully as me and where are those places where I feel like I'm shrinking and what do I feel most comfortable doing. So I could tell you all the things to do, but if you don't feel comfortable getting up and just starting your presentation instead of taking that moment to minimize all of your successes, then it's not going to be helpful for you if you're not comfortable with it. So you also have to do some assessment of these are the ways in which I can address this toxic humility by showing up fully as myself, asking myself, where am I shrinking? How do I feel in my body when someone starts introducing me by doctor or whatever title? Where is it I'm feeling in my body and how can I address that?
I like that you differentiated. Hey, it's going to look different for wherever you are along this spectrum.
Yeah.
And what I was thinking as you were speaking is that's a good beforehand exercise. All
Hmm.
right. I'm about to walk up here. I'm about to walk up on this stage. What's one thing I'm gonna do to not shrink in this moment? And
Yeah.
you said earlier, I'm not gonna minimize my bio.
Hmm.
That can be a way, or I'm gonna share one idea that if I'm feeling it, I'm gonna share it. I have this practice for myself. I never linked it to this specific conversation, but now as we're speaking, I am. Is if there's something that I want to do, and the only reason why I won't do it is because I'm scared, like scuba diving. I don't swim. I have asthma. It's a whole bunch of things. I did it.
Well, okay, go
And it
ahead,
was
girl.
absolutely beautiful. It was just a moment I just loved it, and I would do it again. So for that, I was like, the only reason why I don't do it is because I'm scared. So then I
Yeah.
must. I love how you kept bringing up how's it feeling in your body. Like,
Mhm.
come on, we know when we uncomfortable. So we're gonna
Yes.
put down all facades and be
Mhm.
real with ourselves, right? If something's making you uncomfortable, the challenge that we can make for ourselves is to unpack that, sit with that discomfort. What's going on with you right there? And lean into a healthier practice. And I love that throughout this book, you give us multiple ways. Is there something else in this book that you want to highlight for folks that you feel as though would elevate this discussion?
Ooh, okay. Yeah, I wasn't ready for that question, Dr. Davis.
Right.
Yeah, I think honestly, the whole book is just really me pouring myself and my research into something that want it to be kind of tangible, if that makes sense, and adjustable for others. The biggest highlight for me is looking at the leadership development piece and the importance of telling our stories. Because when we tell our stories, that means one, no one else can tell our stories and interpret it and figure out what we mean by what we did or what we said, but also it gives us the opportunity to do a lot of self reflection of either where am I showing up in a way that I want to show up and be seen by others, and where am I showing up in a way where I'm not really claiming my fire. I'm not claiming this space that I have to help others to grow and develop. And so, really, just the whole book is just a journey through the stages of building a fire, and that fire being whatever is burning within you for that next thing you want to do. It's not just about stepping into a leadership role. It's how can I be a better leader even of my own life?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we forget that even in our own lives we are leaders. When we have to plan at least 3 meals a day for ourselves, that is leading something.
Word.
And so that's why I say the book is not just for those who have the title of leader, but it's for all of us because we're all leading in some space. But it's definitely a journey through what it means to recognize where have I allowed myself to not be seen, and how can I now show up fully at my intersections, because it's going to make me to not only be able to better lead in whatever way I'm leading, but also to really fall in love with myself again.
That takes us to a perfect way to kind of round out everything
Yeah,
because you end the book with one of my favorite scriptures. Part 5 is fan the flame. And I have fan the flame Fridays
I love it. I love it.
on TikTok where I say tips, tricks in discussion just to fan the flame of all of our greatness and uniqueness that's
Yeah.
already in us.
Yes, it's
So when I
absolutely.
saw that you ended this with fan the flame, I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
Closing out the section, if I say, "Sis, fan the flame," what is something you want me to hear,
Mm,
really receive when you say that?
mm. Fan the flame is build community
Mm,
in everything that you do. None of us are going to succeed without community. So, fanning the flame is taking what I've learned from point A to point B to point Z, just sharing what you have discovered and who you are, how they can be more of who they are, and building community, not only with intention, but as transformation. So, we're not talking about that, as you mentioned, transactions of what can you get from me,
mhm.
but transforming our community in a way that each one of us feels safe enough to show up fully as who we are.
I thank you so much
Absolutely.
for sharing your brilliance on this platforms. I do want to remind everybody to go get your copy. Go get your copy of this book so that you can uncover some things, unlearn some things, make peace, have grace for yourself so that you can claim your fire.
Yes, I love
Claim
it.
your fire. So, tell the people how to find you.
Absolutely. So intentionally, you cannot find my book in Amazon because this is about us and for us. You can find my book at www.brandynicole.com/claiming fire. You can also find me on Instagram as Dr. Brandy Nicole, TikTok, Dr. Brandy Nicole, LinkedIn is Brandy Nicole One, and Facebook, Brandy Nicole Brooks. So all of those ways you can connect with me. You can also, there's also a contact me link on my website. So if you go to the website, you'll be able to sign up for a newsletter, get information. If you want me to come and talk to you more about claiming fire, if you want to have a one-to-one, a group session, we can do that as well.
Thank you so much for joining us here on our show today. We are in the Leadership Lounge. This was our welcome back episode because this was episode number 1 of season 2. And today we were overcoming toxic humility, coined by Dr. Brandy Nicole Brooks. overcoming toxic humility, refusing to shrink. Just want to leave you with a reminder there's no destination, there's nothing to get right, there's no arrival. If we just engage in intentional practice, the next step is always better than the previous one. That's all that matters. Until next time, I'll see you in the Leadership Lounge with Dr. Shanesia Davis. Bye. So happy you joined us in the lounge today. Go check out youandmeconsulting.com for services and products.